Hello everyone, this is Ethan Says Stuff. Welcome back. Today we're going to be saying some stuff about the movie The Backrooms, which was directed by Cam Parsons. He's only 20. Bet you guys didn't know that one. Little fun fact for you for today. And it's based on his internet web series, which I am not familiar with, which is the point of this video. This is going to serve as both an analysis and a review, because we're going to be trying to make sense of the nonsense that happens in this movie. Because I'm sure I'm not the only one that is... Or maybe I am. Maybe I'm the only one that's in the dark here and hasn't actually watched a YouTube series or anything. That'll just be kind of embarrassing, though, at that point then. Because then y'all are just looking at me like I'm a goofball. But anyway, for those not familiar, it's a web series that he made on YouTube a couple years back. And it's about these kind of liminal spaces that I'm sure you've seen pictures of before. I'm sure you've heard of the Caretaker. That's my only impression of it. They're usually pretty closely connected. And... there's actually a cameo of one of the songs in this movie, so shout out, bless up. I'm not completely in the dark here, because I actually knew some of it. But it's about these creepy liminal spaces. Obviously, his take on it is a lot more fleshed out as a story, but originally it started as this picture behind me, where we're at right now. And kind of serves as kind of this, oh, something's off, kind of the uncanny valley. This is kind of when I feel like the term kind of started getting really popular, but I've just never really gotten into this series like others have somehow. I got into other analog horror stuff or like ARG stuff, but just somehow never this, which I don't really know how I never got to that, especially over quarantine and stuff. Like, rough time. It's just like really creepy to be in, like an abandoned mall. Been to Puente Hills down in Ontario, City Industry, whatever you want to, that area. The AMC, the round one, that building is... I don't want to go back there anytime soon willingly, but I probably will, because it's like kind of chill. I don't know, trying to catch a vibe at the abandoned AMC, abandoned mall, whatever. Getting all the nonsense out of the way now here. This is going to serve as our kind of analysis review. I want to do kind of review as well, but I figured I'd just bundle it in with this analysis here because it makes more sense. That way I don't have to keep making multiple videos about it. I don't really have time for that. I'm still in college and still have a job. I ain't making mans doing this yet, so y'all gotta bear with me. As mentioned, this, like for real this time, this is going to be kind of my analysis review coverage of it. I'll have review stuff sprinkled in, but overall it's kind of just going to be me trying to make sense of what is given to us through the movie. A lot of it is very straightforward, but a lot of it is kind of up to interpretation here. I went to this movie with a bunch of my friends. Y'all know the group. If you don't, you'll get to know them. They're going to keep being in my videos. But my friend Anthony, he's very big into the Backrooms series and actually knows a lot more about it compared to myself. I didn't want him to spoil too much about it to me. I didn't tell him that, but luckily he didn't. So shout out, Anthony. You might be watching this because it's Backrooms related also, but bless up, thank you. We're here making the video now. I don't really know where to start specifically for this, as I've never done this sort of analysis format before, and also I don't have the footage on me, so I can't go like, oh, and then right here we have the clip of this, and then right here we have this, and this is proof of this. So as you can see, this happened then. So I'm kind of just going off of my knowledge of watching it the one time. I'm trying to record this the week of. I watched it like 3 days ago now at the time of this recording. I'm probably going to go watch it again because, long story short, I absolutely adore this. You've seen my letterbox if you're following me on there. If you're not, Ethan Talks Movie, Ethan Talks Movies. I don't really remember the username. It'll be on the screen. If you want to go follow it, link will be in the description as well. I have a link tree in my bios on everything. We're plugging that early. I'll plug it at the end, hopefully, if I remember as well. But if I don't, here's your reminder. Go tap in. I just really loved it. I fell into this kind of really obsessed state over this. And I'm thinking about getting merch from it. Like, I'm just really obsessed. I've been listening to the soundtrack or the score for this over again. I just really love what he's created here, and I'm gonna watch the YouTube series and stuff after this. I just wanted to make this before, but I love what he's created here in this world, the sound overall, just generally everything that's here is fantastic, and the way that it is crafted, especially in the movie, especially for him being 20 years old, it's crafted so masterfully. The way it's shot, the cinematography is incredible, the score is incredible, the acting so amazing. And it really left me like, my only big con was I wanted more movie, which I don't think I could say that much. Like, I could say, oh, I wanted more movie, like disappointed, but like I wanted more movie good. I was loving this. There was multiple points in the movie where I felt like I was not breathing properly. I was just staring in like awe. Like when Clark, oh, before we get in there, obviously spoilers are inbound for the movie if you haven't seen it yet. But if you're watching this, I'm gonna assume you have, or if not, you're on the same page as me and you're trying to decipher stuff that happened in this movie, and you haven't seen the YouTube series. Which, no spoilers for that here because I don't know what happens in that. So just the movie spoilers here. Maybe I'll go back and cover the YouTube series later at another point if people want to follow up to this, which wouldn't, I don't know if that'd make that much sense, because I don't know if this makes much sense to begin with, because most of you have already seen the YouTube series and are just watching me acknowledge partial information with other information that already exists. Am I gonna get called a LARPer now because I only know part of the information? Like, because people love misusing that term now. I've used it in I think every video I've uploaded the past month now, but I don't know. Like, I need to stay on track. I just absolutely loved what he's created here, and yeah, like, incredible stuff across the board. I'm gonna go watch it again. Everything is just so artistically well done. Great age for that as well. Obviously, we have Obsession doing fantastic as well from a smaller creator as well, Curry Barker. And then we have I Love Boosters, a very artistically driven movie, which was kind of close to the same page than Obsession was to this. They kind of merged, and we got a horror artistic movie in the way that this is formatted overall. And this has also become A24's highest grossing movie already in however long it's been, a week and a half, 2 weeks. I'm not particularly sure. I'm probably wrong again. I keep getting this stuff wrong when I do the dates for these videos, but on screen here. But actually into the analyzation stuff for real this time. I'll put a time card at the beginning here for anyone that wanted to just skip to this point and didn't want to listen to the Yappuccino we got here. So everyone that skipped to this point, we're going to start by kind of laying the basis of the foundation of explaining how stuff is set up and showcased in the movie before we actually get into how each thing's laid out. I don't really know how to properly set this up. I've never posted a theory video. I've never done a theory video. There's no proper way to actually flow through this because it's an existing series. It's not all new information to people. And I don't really have a verdict on the rooms because, or just anything that happens in this movie, because it's very open. It's a very mysterious movie, and I love it for that. It's so good. Obviously, this is probably going to be the easiest adaptation of it to understand, or easiest interpretation, because it's a movie, and I don't know if he held back on making it mysterious or not to get people more interested in it, to watch the YouTube series, anything of that sort. If he didn't, shout out to Kane Parsons. Go for that, for not toning it down. I'm going to stop bashing on other franchises, so I'm just going to continue with this now. My best example I can use for this is how I explained it to Eddie. It kind of functions. I don't know if I'm the only one that's seen this, because when I was trying to explain it to my friends, they had never seen this before. But there's that AI generated like Minecraft thing engine from a couple years back, and I saw a lot of videos on TikTok and online of people posting about it, being like, "Oh, dude, this is crazy how this functions. Like, what's happening? This thing sucks." That's kind of how I'm imagining trying to explain that it works, especially to Eddie. I was like, I think that's how the Backrooms function here, is it recognizes patterns or like vague ideas of stuff and misremembers or anything of that sort. So like in these Minecraft clips, it'll be like, oh, like they look up at the sky and then they try to look back down and they're in the ocean because it recognizes blue. Or they'll place one sand block or something brown and they're in the desert because all it recognizes is the concept of this. But that's kind of what it seems to play through sometimes. Like, I feel like that's kind of going to be my verdict for a lot of stuff, is it's like, oh, sometimes it functions like this, but sometimes it functions like this. Because we see in the teaser with like the chair sinking down to the ground, and obviously like, oh, like it's sinking because it's like clipping through the ground. Like, I'm not completely in the dark of the concept of what the Backrooms are. I know you clip into it, obviously showcased in the movie as well with the wall. I don't know what they're called. I'm gonna call them gateways probably. Kind of clips through the ground there, and we see it in the movie here. There's a shot later in the movie that shows Mary's house. I'll get to the characters later as well. I don't think they're super relevant to introduce into talking about the world segment, but it kind of functions as vaguely remembering this stuff. As we have the shot with Mary's house, as it kind of lowers down the levels, or like the camera where it's like shh, that whole shot sequence, whatever you want to call it, where it descends through the levels of their house. It's like misremembering details like the doorway and stuff, and then it turns into a little crack because like, oh, there's something in the wall. So the next level turns it into a small little door, and the next level turns into a big hallway, and it just kind of knowing the idea of something was there. So I'm thinking theoretically, if you drew something on a wall or something like that, like in the next rendition of it being remembered, it could be a doorway, it could be something else that you drew on the wall, for example. But then I think about it and I'm like, that doesn't make the most sense, because when is this resetting? Like, when is it on, like, is it on a cooldown when it remembers stuff or what? Because we have the shot towards the end where she goes out and it's like all levels, and this is how I'm imagining it, is it's the most recent remembered level, whatever, on top, and then down and down and down and down and down and so on and so forth. But is it resetting like when they leave the world? Is it resetting when they leave the room? Like, I'm not particularly certain on how that's actually functioning in itself, but that is how it's functioning, is it's misremembering ideas. And that's straight up told to us during the dinner sequence. Phenomenal sequence, by the way. Yeah, crazy stress level sequence. I'll get into that more when I get to the character stuff. We don't really have a strict idea of how this works, because sometimes it'll showcase us the levels and be like, oh, it remembers stuff this way, it stacks, whatever. And then other times, or like when you think about it more, I'm like, how's this actually functioning? Because we don't, like, obviously we see them in and out. Clark does it a lot. Clark comes in and out a lot. But like Mary, for example, or just generally her household over time, that's probably over time. It's just like throughout the time of her house being forgotten from the memory. But I don't know. Like, I just thought about that right now as well. Like, I don't know how specifically we're functioning on that level. Like, if it's just on a cycle every night, it repeats. On to the next detail we have is it can absorb or like blend elements from the real world in, or in, they could kind of cross over back and forth. The Backrooms itself has less strength when it comes to crossing over to the real world, but the real world bleeds in a lot into the Backrooms. Obviously, that's the main concept of how it works. Like, we just covered that. Y'all aren't stupid. But we have at the beginning where the breaker box has the parts clipped through. Obviously, it's kind of bleeding into the real world somehow. I don't know if that's new or what. We don't have a time frame on how long Clark actually owns his furniture store. And this kind of ties into our next point here, is there's a strong electromagnetic signal that is kind of projected or like sent from the rooms itself. I think it's specifically doorways that cause the signals or like the magnetic pulses to happen, because the power often randomly goes out in his business, on and off randomly, sporadically. I don't know why that happens. I don't know if it's someone, like, whenever stuff enters or exits gateways nearby. We're going to get into more of that in a bit here. But I haven't been able to pin down that yet. That might be explained in the series. And that's going to be kind of my rule of thumb for everything I don't have an explanation for from the movie, is it's, oh, go watch the series and it'll explain that. Like, or maybe it's not. And this stuff is just up to interpretation also. This ties into my belief that the doorways themselves, the gateways themselves, are like, you have this signal. As later in the movie, we have Bobby and Kat, who are these side characters, unfortunately, rest their souls. And I'll get into them more once we get to the character segment. But I have to mention them for the sake of this point. When Bobby enters the gateway, we get to see this kind of interruption on the camera end, but it only is when they're passing through the gateway. It's not the whole time they're in the rooms. The rest of the time the camera just looks bad quality, because this is in 1990, I believe it was. It might have been 89. I think it was 90 though. But point being, the magnetic force interrupts or messes with the camera functioning to a degree, as it kind of cuts out or like fizzes out whatever upon entering, but pretty much functions as an endless memory bank is what I've put to like what we have put together from our knowledge on the movie. It can leech off memories, it can leech off emotions, appearance, personality that I'll tie more into people when we get there later. But it can leech off of a lot of different stuff, and we're not really specifically sure about the limit or on how or what or why, like if it's living thing itself or like what's happening here, or if it's just functioning as kind of an algorithm that's trying to be sentient. We're not too sure. This is why we get the Backrooms level 1, I guess. I'm not going to really use levels because I know that's the SCP Foundation stuff and they're not the same continuity. And a lot of people think they are, which a lot of people are saying the movie's boring for that, but it's not the same continuity, which people don't understand for some reason. And even I understand that, and I didn't watch the YouTube series or the SCP Foundation stuff. I just know they're different. Come on, guys. Get it together. But level 1, I guess, this office space one we have, is obviously directly bleeding in from the furniture store, the Ottoman Empire. And it kind of gets all funky and weird and has furniture all around it and stuff, doorways, chairs, throne. Need to make note of that with Bobby and Kat's shoes, with the broken throne in that room. Obviously was more than likely Captain Clark's domain, I guess. Kind of odd that it's so close to the cutout and that's never been disrupted. Same with anything involving the actual business. But I guess obviously this thing wouldn't know that there's a doorway and it's in a different dimension, or if it's even possible for the entities that are living in there to cross over. Then that leads to the question, like, oh, what about the other rooms? Like, we get down that awesome sequence, that super awesome sequence when we get to the found footage stuff, and Clark runs through like the pool room, and then like the Christmas room and stuff, that whole sequence, and then ends up in like that hotel looking one, I guess. I don't really know what to call it. Like that, I guess that's kind of the point that it's so strange, is because you can't really explain what it looks like. Oh, it looks like a dog, but whatever. But we have him run through these other places. I think this is bleed over from other doorways, as I think they exist near him, as we have the seagulls near him. Obviously seagulls can exist anywhere, but his business itself takes place in San Jose, and that's by the bay. And there are seagulls in the back rooms. There's the dead one later in the movie. There's the one at the beginning of the movie during that sequence that flies through. Obviously, it flies through a gateway of some sort. We can assume that there's another gateway somewhere in San Jose. Obviously, they're popping up, because where else would the seagull flying from? I doubt there would be a seagull in the basement, and it didn't look dismembered or anything. So there's no way it's one of the still life creatures or like remembered creatures or something like that. Obviously, there's more. Maybe them popping up is what's causing the power outages that I mentioned earlier. Not specifically sure. But we have the pool room and stuff and the hotel and stuff, which obviously you could be like, oh, like that's probably some other area, like it's probably a public pool or something, or there's a hotel with a pool, and that's why there's like the lounge chairs and such. When he encounters Cat after they get lost again, you're like, oh, like it's probably from that, whatever. Or not you, I don't know if you're thinking that, but I was thinking that it's probably like where another gateway was near, and there's probably some way out of there right there, because there's no other reason for it to bleed in there. I mean, obviously it's possible that his memories get carried over or whatever, but there's no way it's expanding right there in the moment. But I guess it could. I guess it could, because it happens later in the movie. I don't know how this thing works. But then that raises the point, oh, what about the Christmas tree room? What about the holiday room? Because it wasn't Christmas time. There was no Christmas stuff happening in the movie. And that's where I need to tie into the fact that I think it could leech off memories. And the reason that the Christmas tree was so normal, for example, compared to everything else, is since it leeches off memories of those nearby it, which we'll tie into people in a bit, it can leech off memories of places. So this Christmas tree, while I feel like it could have been disfigured more, I think this is representative of how the holiday season, so I guarantee there's other holidays down in there, I think this is representative of how Christmas, for example, is very fondly remembered and very distinctly remembered by a lot of people, and when it bleeds in and absorbs the memories of the people around these gateways and such, it can make such a distinct memory of what Christmas is, because Christmas tree is obviously the main thing of Christmas, and it's generally when he enters, people I've seen talking about it, they say it's either the scariest or it's the most nostalgic point. Like it gives a vibe of nostalgia because yeah, it's lit up like those early 2000s. I mean, obviously this is 1990, not early 2000s, but kind of use the same technology up until whenever LEDs took over everything, whatever. But these kind of luminescent lights, very so retro vibes, kind of providing this kind of warm glow here. And like I said, I think that's banking off the nostalgia coming from people's memories of Christmas time. Obviously, it's not fully correct as it has like music playing from the tree. It has the idea of what a Christmas would be, specifically the Christmas tree, due to how strong of a memory that is in people's minds, is my guess. I saw other people online talking about it being similar to that as well, but not quite on that page. So there's definitely probably other people that are on the same page there. And I also need to make note of the fact that this probably sounds like a bunch of nonsense that I'm talking about, and I keep going back and forth. And I said this would be making sense out of nonsense, but I might just be making more nonsense because, bro, I didn't order a Yappuccino. That's kind of where I'm going to touch on for the world for now. I'll go back to it whenever it's necessary. But for now, we're going to get into characters. We're like, I want to say 30 minutes in now. Thanks for sticking around so far. Starting with character one, we will cover one of the two main characters is Clark. Obviously has more screen time in the movie than our other character, Mary, and probably the more fleshed out story overall. He's divorced, alcoholic, anger issues, runs Ottoman Empire, goes with this pirate marketing scheme for his store, which I think is a little charming. It's kind of vibe, I'm not gonna lie. But he also is a failed architect, and a lot of people theorize, oh, like, we're gonna jump forward a lot for stuff, but from his beginning to when he discovers the Backrooms, such an incredible sequence to have him walking through in silence like that. I again, another sequence where I'm sitting there. It's good. It's gnarly stuff. I love it. I'm like, I need to watch this again. I need the DVD. I'm probably gonna get the vinyl. I don't know, man. I love this world so far. But people would be like, oh, that's how he just, like, that's how he can map it out, whatever. But I think it's less important for that fact and more important due to the fact of his descent into insanity. As he gets lost in it, Mary doesn't really believe him at first, along with him not really having a reason to care anymore. He has nothing really to lose. His business isn't thriving. He has no wife, nobody that really cares besides Bobby and Kat. And at this point, when he takes them to the back rooms, found footage sequence, perfect. They get mauled. Well, Bobby does, and it's up to our interpretation on what happens to Kat. And she goes missing, and this is where we tie into the themes of the opening windows and such, which I haven't really taken much thought into, but there's a lot of window imagery in this movie. I think it's kind of just straight up, like, take on the saying, like, oh, like, when you close the door, open a window, or whatever. New alleyways, whatever of the sorts, new avenues. But was not the game theory. We get to Bobby getting mauled. Again, incredible sequence, such a good sequence, and then Kat, and then it cuts off. And next time we see him is this dinner sequence, which I'm gonna keep saying this for every single scene. I'm really realizing I really love this movie more and more. Phenomenal scene as well. We get the kind of true story of what happened on the night when Clark got kicked out of his own home, which he pays for, by the way. He pays for it. Don't forget that, because he might get a knife to the neck. He definitely has nothing to lose anymore when Mary comes to find him. During this dinner sequence, we're introduced to other characters. I'm going to cover them in a bit here. But we find Kat's head in the fridge. Eesh. Don't look it too good. But this whole, like, monologue he has about, like, oh, like, this is my house, whatever. And we kind of get the true feeling of how he actually feels about that night. Not censored for a therapist to get, like, wrote up or anything of the sorts as crazy. Because he does sound crazy during the sequence. Incredible acting on his part. But we also learn that the reason that he loves this place so much and why he's staying, one, obviously, subconsciously, it's because he has nothing to lose. Two, him being a wannabe architect, or like it was a career path he was considering, whatever the sort, this is such like a fascinating concept to him, and he's mapping it out. And yes, that's important to the plot, but I don't think it's important, like I mentioned, people think, oh, he's an architect, that's why he can write a map. He's an architect, and that makes him find the beauty in this. And I find it interesting that both characters that we have here have a connection to the Backrooms, whether it be positive or negative, and he finds the beauty in it, and he absolutely adores it. And that's why he's losing his mind in this place willingly, because it's just such a beautiful place to him, architecturally, like from a creative standpoint here. And he's such a flawed character, but he's written really well. And I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, I can see myself in him. Maybe it's good that we're acknowledging that we're bad people sometimes, but I promise you're not like this guy. But that ultimately leads to him being... Was that the bite of 87? When he gets chomped on by big old Captain Clark, the big old entity that we have lurking around these parts. And I've heard some discussion like, oh, it kind of sucks that there was no gore, like there wasn't much gore, we didn't see him get mopped or anything. I think what we saw sufficed. Like, I think that was perfectly serviceable for what we needed for his character. He's not supposed to have a grand send-off or anything. It's supposed to be tragic. Then we shift over to Mary's character, who is the second half of the coin here. While she does fundamentally have a smaller part in the story, I feel she's just as important, as she causes the natural progression of Clark's character to function. And it kind of sucks that that's the way that I'm looking at her. But ultimately, I feel like that is the best way. Is from a writing standpoint, it starts with her in the therapy session and she's doing the roleplay thing and such, and it's just a great way to provide natural connection for who these characters are at the beginning of our journey with them. But throughout the whole movie, she kind of has this subplot, which I've seen some people say kind of on the nose. I don't think it's that awful, and realistically, these are both pretty simple in story, like in concept of what they are. One's about your past and the other's about forgiving yourself, I guess, or like kind of acknowledging yourself to kind of get over these loops, which is constantly talked about the movie, is, oh, you're in a cycle constantly, like you need to get over it. And that's kind of what Mary serves as. It's her quote there that we're following, and she talks about this. She had a crazy mother who got taken away from her as a kid. She doesn't really have much people in her life either, like Clark does. And like I mentioned about the connection, I think it is partially implied, personally, I've seen people arguing about this, that her mother had contact with the Backrooms at some point. I don't know what point the Backrooms started existing, because obviously we have the async stuff. I don't know if specifically when they started working with the Backroom stuff, that's when they officially opened, or it was like the first documented time, or if it was possible that her mother had gotten involved in the Backroom stuff at some point or another, and that's what caused her to be so like paranoid about everything all the time. Because realistically, she could have not been crazy. She could have had this encounter when she was younger, or just like at that point, and had an encounter with the Backrooms or something crazy like that. And you can't be like telling your kid like, there's rooms in the closet, like something like that. Because if my mom told me that, I'd be like, yeah, mom, yeah, whatever you say, man. Because come on, you can't tell your kid that. You can't tell the authorities that. You're gonna get put in jail or something for crazy. You're gonna take your kid, and they end up taking your kid regardless. But it's also possible she's just schizophrenic or crazy or whatever. And that's why Mary finds so much trouble in fixing Clark as an individual, because him going down this descent is kind of mirroring her mother's path into this craziness that she saw as a child. And while he's not someone close to her or anything of the sorts, he's kind of the only person that she kind of has a relationship with, on just a fundamental aspect, because they see each other often, do their appointments and such, and it's kind of just a relationship due to proximity, or like whatever the term is. But that's the main reason why she has this kind of fondness for him, I'd assume. One being the patient, second being this is like the only person she consistently gets to see after her mother's gone. And seeing him kind of take the same descent into insanity stings. I would imagine it stings. And now her fate at the end of the movie is kept ambiguous. We don't know specifically what happens to her, if she gets killed or what happens there. Personally, I think what happens is they end up keeping her on the team due to her being a therapist, and it helps fundamentally for their goal to kind of study this stuff. As she can understand the concepts here to a better degree as they're represented in her book. Obviously metaphorically, but literally the Backrooms is a representation of what she's talking about the whole time, about it being a loop and a cycle, and you need to break out of it, and it's horrible, it's traumatic, and anything of that sorts. So I think realistically she stays on the team, which therefore she's still trapped in a cycle because she won't be able to ever leave. I mean, yes, it's kind of not that bittersweet. Like, it doesn't sting that much due to the fact that she doesn't really have much people to go back to. But it also stings to the fact that she's losing all sense of her life that she had. She's going to be stuck working for Async for this time now. I was also very on the fence about whether she actually gets out or not at the end here after she beats Captain Clark. That's what I'm going to call the entity thing also, the creature. Instead of Clark's person, Captain Clark. I've seen people call him Clark Prime. Kind of hard, but we're just going to call him Captain Clark. And when she beats him, she's taken to this facility, whatever. And I wasn't sure if this was actually in the back room still or not, until we get to this shot where it's kind of out and we see the scientists aren't in hazmat suits. And it leads me to believe, oh, this is probably fine. They're probably not in the back rooms anymore as they're not worried about the exposure to it. Because there's also like this door behind her, which I'm not sure if it's actually functioning as like a portal or it's just literally like a door to kind of lock off the facility from the rest and the scientists are safe in here. Because those clouds and windows do be looking pretty artificial at the end during that interview with Phil. Shout out. We're getting to you next, buddy. But I think she does get to live, just not freely. So, kind of bittersweet ending for her there. Pretty sad stuff. I don't... Like, just great stuff from this movie overall. I'd really need to give it another watch to make sure I'm kind of getting everything correct here and I'm not sounding like a lunatic. But overall, her kind of arc ends with kind of dropping her past behind her as she carries around that rock with the handprint from her and her mother when they moved into the house. And she lets it go. She's not going to carry it around her anymore. She's going to break free of that cycle of that trauma. Next, getting to Phil. Not too much to note about him. He's kind of our third character that we have of note. Obviously there's Bobby and Kat as well, but we don't really have much screen time with them, and there's not really much to them besides they work at the Ottoman Empire. Phil is our third point of view here, as he works at Async and has a family and everything's fine and normal, whatever. But he's actually characterized because he seems to have a much more kind of infatuation or like interest in functionally how the backrooms are operating, as he has like these kind of frame pictures above his TV at his house. Obviously he gives the exposition about what actually Async is, functioning as an MRI company, ties into the magnet stuff I mentioned earlier. But also he doesn't seem entirely corporate based on his responses to Mary and how he's super like guarding of their interview and kind of how he's going about this with her. So I don't think he's entirely bad if Async is to function as kind of the villain in here. But I don't mind. I liked that kind of point of view that we had from the villain, I guess. I guess Clark or him could be the villain here. But Async is who I'm going to assume is supposed to represent the bad guys here. Moving on to our last section here, we're going to cover the still lifes, entities, creature things. I don't really know what to call them. They're credited as still lifes, some of them. Others are not quite the same, so I'm not quite sure how that works. But the still lifes are kind of these final remnant things of what the people were. They're made of like slimy stuffing, which Clark says is edible during the dinner sequence. We get all these characters introduced to us during the dinner sequence. So, forgive me for jumping back here and covering everyone one by one, but they all are here in the dinner sequence. Starting with the most important one, we're going to cover Captain Clark. Not really a still life per se, as he bleeds and generally functions differently. He literally serves as like the king to these ones, as they all kind of obey him during this dinner sequence when he shows up. But that represents the literal emotional and physical incarnation of Clark taking on the appearance of him during his commercial. And we know that happens due to earlier in the movie when he's sitting watching the TV and it cuts and he has the connection to the camera in the rooms. So there's kind of overlap with this, the signal that's being projected here, and we see it as well with Phil's part with his family, and he's watching Neverending Story. Maybe a reference to Backrooms, so Neverending Loop. never-ending cycle, whatever. I think this sort's probably a dumb little Easter egg. Not dumb. Fire movie, but might be a little touch of that. But it cuts to the pirate commercial, and that is where the Backrooms actually draws the appearance from Clark. Behavior-wise, it draws from his most rageful and intense emotions. Kind of takes on literally drunk as a sailor, with the stumbling around with the peg leg and such. Fundamentally, that is what Captain Clark is, a representation, an incarnation of the worst that we have of Clark. Also, I've seen people saying that at the beginning it's not Captain Clark that kills the async guy during that opening sequence. Y'all tripping. The first thing you see when he steps out the hallway is the pirate hat, and then the last thing we see is the peg leg. Like, could not have been explained to you more forward, but okay, sure. Going forward to the next most important one, we have the still life of what I'm going to assume represents Barbara, who is Clark's ex-wife, based on the red hair and how neglectful he is towards her in the dinner sequence. He'd be like, oh, that guy is obviously there's someone with a wheelchair, whatever, this guy is kind of weird, I don't know, and doesn't acknowledge her during that sequence. And the red hair we see in a picture earlier, which is bled in through the picture kind of thing. I believe the kind of shaken up face. I don't know if I'd pause. I don't know if the still life like appearances are actually taken from anything particular. My friend Anthony said, oh, when she was shaking no, like disapproving of him behavior wise. If it functions like that, I think more accurately it would be that when he's always drunk and kind of seeing double, like a better terms, her face is all like kind of boop, 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 like it's cloned the whole way across and rotated. And yes, it could be like smeared like checking no, but I think it could also be just be seeing double, seeing multiple, whatever, drunk. But that kind of image of her is bled in from the photo that we have of her in that he keeps on the bed in the Ottoman Empire. Also based on Clark scalping this still life to put the hair on Mary during that sequence for the roleplay again when we get the true feelings. It's pretty obvious it's supposed to be Barbara. Next, we have this interesting case, is the wheelchair guy with the lamp, whatever, everyone knows, Gem Alert, whatever you want to call him, Archibald Leland Sutter, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, where I don't think he actually represents a person, and this is where I get confused again on how the Backrooms actually function, because he seems to be a copy of more abstract concepts. His name abbreviated is ALS. Duh. You can use English or a language. You can use words. But I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name of the disease, but it's a motor neuron disease that targets weakness in limbs or it starts by making you weaker in the limbs. And it's kind of associated with dementia, which is a close theme that we have with the music that's usually associated with the Backrooms, being the Caretaker album. Again, not going to try to pronounce the disease, but ALS was also founded in 1869, which is when I think this Still Life gets his appearance based off of, in this kind of fitted up suit. And obviously, yeah, it's 1990, people could still be wearing that, but I didn't see anyone walking around with suits in this movie. Except for Clark, because he was in his business outfit, because he runs the place, I don't know. But I think it's possible that that is a factor playing into the appearance there, is based on when the disease was discovered. But also, Archibald Leland Sutter, all different types of lamp names. Like all three of them. You could go on, I don't even know, IKEA, probably, and find all three of those. You could look up Archibald lamp, Leland lamp, Sutter lamp, and they'll all pop up. Different types of lamps. So I think that's more of like an abstract concept of ideas. Also, the tying into weakness of limbs is the wheelchair stuff for Archibald here. Shout out Archibald, you were loved. And lastly, getting into the bearded still life, we actually have no information on this guy. We don't know who he is. A lot of people say, oh, he's probably the electrician earlier in the movie. He never beard. No reason for him to have 6 eyes or 3 noses or wear that shirt. Just generally, I'm kind of lost on who this is supposed to represent or what this is supposed to represent. And if anyone can help, let me know down below or send me a thread, tag me on something online on one of my social media accounts, send it to me. Because I'm really curious on what this guy's supposed to represent here besides being fat and food. Because he cuts him open and then he has the slimy, gooey stuff, but it's like kind of not gooey sometimes. I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna say it a lot again. I just really don't know how this thing functions, and I think it's really fun trying to talk about it. Now again, I have heard complaints that there's not enough life shown or like showed to us in the Backrooms here, because I guess it's a popular thing. I don't know if that's just in the SP Foundation stuff or if that's actually in Kane Parsons' continuation or continuity. But I think the movie properly conveys this, as will consistently throughout the movie. They'll hear like footsteps or there'll be noises, and they'll be like, "Oh, what was that? Oh, what was that?" And there's no one actually there. And it's just kind of the idea of this stuff happening. And also, it makes sense if, like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of basing this off of the real world flip or like next to the gateway. Because there wasn't many people that are just kicking it at the Ottoman Empire. We see like a couple guests in there throughout the whole movie. So obviously there's not going to be too much life there. There's going to be a couple shadow footprints, but nothing major of note. But I'm not too sure. I'm just not really too sure on how that's working. But I am a fan of it. I do like how the footsteps come in and come out, and everyone's kind of just like, "Ooh, what's going on?" But also by that logic, I would assume that a more populated area would include more life forms, more still life, anything of sorts. Like a mall. A mall would probably have a bunch if there's a gateway there. Something. I would think the hotel area would have more than. I don't know. Already flawed. I'm just, again, trying to make sense of this stuff mentally. I need something to talk to. Someone to talk to about it. And it doesn't really seem like much people online are big fans of the movie. So y'all gotta low-key hop off for a second. It's fire, bro. Please trust. But that kind of wraps up like a majority of my thoughts that I had here. Again, huge fan of what Kane Parsons has created here. I'm gonna watch a YouTube series. Sounded like a broken record. Don't care. I absolutely love what he's done here. I want to see his future work more, and just generally, I really love what he's done. If this made sense to you, please consider leaving a like. It's 12:30 now, so it's pretty late. I utilized the green screen for my first time. I haven't had to use this thing yet, so luckily nothing bad happened. No, but like actually, first time using a green screen, my own green screen. I've used green screen before, but just kind of fun thing to do. Figured it'd be a fun little bit to have for this video. Make sure to like I said, leave a comment down below if you agree with anything, disagree with anything. Further thoughts you may have going into this, if you've also only seen the movie, or if you've seen the YouTube series, have a recommendation, have something to tell me to check out, or anything of the sorts. Subscribe, turn notifications on. I'm trying to upload consistently, but as I mentioned earlier, I have a job and I go to college still, and I have other life stuff going on, so I don't know how consistently I'm going to be able to do that. But whenever I do, as I post it on social media, so I'm going to try to have it be as quality content as possible for you guys, because this is fun to do. I don't know, I like doing this. Check me out on the other socials, obviously, like I just mentioned. Other than that, I don't really got much else to make note of. I appreciate you all for sticking around the whole time if you're here. We're running at about an hour now. Yeah, this has been Ethan. Today I said some stuff about the Backrooms movie. Oh yeah, 9 out of 10. 4.5 out of 5 with a heart for Letterboxd users. But 9.5 out of 10. I loved this one. Hopefully you did too, or gained some appreciation for it. Or go watch it again. Discount Tuesdays, most theaters do that. Go tap in again. Go give it another watch. Let me know. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.